Traditional Easter brioche bread Paska. I'm super excited to share this recipe with you. It's so good. It's really good. Very soft, moist. You have buttery, flaky crust on the outside, loaded with tons of flavor. It's the best brioche bread you'll ever try. Let's get started because I can't wait for you to try. Okay, we'll need half of a cup of warm milk. Make sure the milk is warm and not hot, because if it's hot, you'll kill the yeast and the brioche won't rise. Add half of a tablespoon of dry yeast, half of a cup of sugar. Add 3 eggs and additional 2 egg yolks. Give it a quick mix until well combined. Add 3 cups of flour. If you have bread flour, it's best to use it, but all-purpose flour will work too. Add 170 grams of butter. That's 1.5 sticks of butter, and it must be at room temperature. It must be soft. Add 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of vanilla, and then 1 lemon zest. It will make the brioche smell so good. I'm gonna use 1 medium-sized lemon and shred just the yellow part. Now, this is an important part. You'll knead the dough for like 15 minutes. I'm going to show you right now how the texture of the dough will look like when it's ready. Mix it on the highest speed, and this is 2 minutes of mixing. You can see it's very runny, sticky, it's rough, so it's definitely not ready yet. Okay, and this is after 5 minutes. You can see the dough is getting a little gloss and shine. It's kind of getting together, but it's not there yet. And this is 10 minutes of kneading on the high speed. Look at that gloss. It looks very nice, but I don't like the texture. It's still very rough. I want it to be very smooth and shiny, so we're gonna give it a little more time. Now we are at 15 minutes total. It's glossy, shiny, it looks beautiful. And if you try to stretch it, it should be thinner than a paper. Do you see how stretchy it is and it doesn't rip? Yep, that's how it should look like. Now we'll need to wait for it to double in size, and it will take a little bit longer than usual, so cover it and don't touch it for the next 2 hours. Raisins are optional, but if you like to, I'll show you how to prepare them. Wash the raisin first and then add 2 bags of strong black tea and cover the raisin with hot water. You're gonna let it sit like this for 2 hours while the dough is proofing. Then you're gonna drain the water and dry the raisins with paper towel. And this is the dough after 2 hours. It's so shiny, and I wish you can smell it. It smells so good. Add the raisins and knead the dough for about 5 minutes until you get this beautiful shine. So at first the dough will get rough, but then after kneading for like 5 minutes, it should get smooth and shiny again. Just look at that. I'm obsessed. Cover it and proof for 2 hours, a little longer than usual. Now we're gonna prepare the molds. I'm gonna use these mugs as my molds. You can use paper molds. You can even use metal pots. Brush some melted butter for easy removal. Usually when shaping the dough we use flour, but this time I'm gonna use melted butter, so I'm brushing melted butter on my surface area, and I'm gonna dip my fingers in butter when shaping the dough. Now we're gonna split the dough, but it will depend on your molds, so what size molds you're using. You'll fill the dough to like 1/3 of the mold. Because I'm using the mugs, I'm splitting the dough into 10 even pieces. Okay, we're gonna stretch the dough, and if your dough is too sticky, you can dip the fingers in butter, and then you're gonna collect the edges like toward the center, basically folding the dough on itself. And then one more time, collect all the edges toward the center and flip the dough over and roll it against the table to create a ball. Use a little butter if you need to, because it can get sticky, but it's okay. Place it with the seam side down. Okay, so because we don't want them to dry out, we're gonna cover them with a plastic wrap and let them proof for 2 hours. Be patient, it will take a little bit longer than usual. Here you can see the dough doubled in size and it's very soft, so it's time to bake. So I transfer them on a baking tray and I bake them at 375 for 28 minutes, but the time will depend on the size of the mold and the material of the mold. I think it's easier to underbake them, so look at the color. You want them to be rich brown color because underbaked dough is not good. So maybe bake them a little longer than less. To make the icing, we're gonna use double boiler method and make sure the bowl doesn't touch the water. Add 2 egg whites and 1 cup of sugar. Constantly mix because egg whites can cook. Add 2 teaspoons of gelatin and you're gonna mix until it's like warm. If you measure it, it's 110 degrees Fahrenheit or it's warm to touch. The purpose of warming the syrup is to melt the sugar crystals, and now we're gonna whip it up. So mix for a few minutes until it's light and fluffy and white. So when you remove the brioche from the mold, give it a little time to set, maybe like 20 minutes, because if it's too hot, you can tear the sides apart. And if you need to use the back of the knife to loosen the edges, it's best to decorate them when the brioche is still warm. I think when it's still warm, the icing sets and dries quicker. The drips, you can totally do it with a spoon, but to have a better control, use a piping bag. This year I decided to decorate my Paska with wildflowers, but there's so many options. You can do meringue, sprinkles, nuts, dry fruit. Just check Pinterest for ideas. This brioche is so light, it literally melts inside your mouth. It's definitely the one. Also, I wanted to show you the icing, that it sets very nicely. It's not sticky. There's no crystals of sugar. So it's really good icing. I really hope you enjoyed this recipe. Wishing you all happy Easter. Jesus is risen. And enjoy your Easter brioche bread.